Right then, good morning. Welcome to NAPIT EXPO 2014 here at Liverpool. My name is Paul Markham and I am the Senior Training Lecturer in Mansfield. The senior, I think, comes from my age. You're all right, guys. So. And what we're going to discuss, 4 sessions today. Only small snippets of some of the training sessions that we put on at our training centres in the country. We've got 4, and the first one we're going to do is an introduction to fire alarm systems. It is amazing how many people ring up the technical helpline every day and always ask questions on fire alarm systems. That doesn't mean to say they don't know, it's just always a nice little backup there. But the fire alarm systems is what we're going to do. Just a brief, very brief overview on how to design, install, test and inspect fire alarms. We run it as a 2-day course. It's run over a 2-day course because there are a good few things to cover. At the end of that 2-day course, we usually stick another 1-day course on that is the fire emergency lighting systems. British Standard 60898, who's put that there? Somebody's just done that one. It's 5839, gentlemen, not 60898. That's a terrible start, but there you go. British Standard 5839 is the fire alarm systems. The course covers the legislation behind it, the design, some risk assessments, install practices, inspection and testing, certification. It is a fact now that building control inspectors are asking for certification for fire alarms and emergency lighting. We conclude with a multiple choice open book examination at the end of it with a certificate. It is not a certificate in such that it's City and Guilds or EAL or anything like that. There aren't many of those courses around. It's just an in-house training, that's all. That's the proper number, thank you. BS 5839. I'm going to today just work on part 6. There are 8 parts. Most of the booklets are on design and manufacturing. The parts that are important to you as installers are parts 1 and 6. Part 1 is primarily when you are installing things like fire alarm panels and heat detectors, smoke detectors like that, and part 6 is mainly primarily smoke detection system in a dwelling, a house, a normal house. So that's what we're going to work on today. A few statistics for you. All these statistics come out of 5839. 80% of all fire deaths and injuries occur in a dwelling, and obviously with a dwelling we mean somebody's private house. There's over 300 deaths a year, 9,000 injuries a year, and the fatality rate in a dwelling where there's no working smoke detector is between 2 to 3 times higher. Smoke detectors, as you probably are aware, are a big part of a new installation, a new building. Smoke detectors have to be fitted, interlinked. The history. We go in the history as well. Smoke Detectors Act came out in 1991. To be quite honest, there was not a lot done about it. It was mentioned, people took it on board, but it just never went through Parliament or anything like that, so it was never brought into effect. It was only when the building regulations came out that it made it importantly that all dwellings had to have some type of escape from fire, but it didn't specifically ask for smoke alarms to be fitted. When the building regulations was updated, document B came into effect and it gave the option, but in 2006 it now states that every single new dwelling has to have a fire alarm system fitted. That is British Standard 5839 Part 6. It's on the bench in front of you if you have a look at it. It's a fairly expensive document. Buying it is more than the regs. It's about 200, 300 quid just for the one book, and then you'd need the part 1 as well. There is a gentleman called Colin Todd who writes a lot of the regulations, and he does a very good commentary booklet. If you go into a search engine, Amazon or Tesco's, and put in Colin Todd, if you want a good commentary on how to design, install, inspect, test fire alarms, then again, that book's on there, you can have a look at it, and it is a very, very good commentary that deals with the regulations in good speaking language. Being electrically biased like you are, you will know that it's not just one book that you have to comply to. You're always complying to lots and lots of different regulations. Smoke detectors under BS 5839 Part 6, you've also got to be aware of Document B of the building regulations, and of course our good old friend BS 7671, the IET wiring regulations. The position where you put smoke detectors in a house comes under British Standard 5839 Part 6. The wiring of it, well, that still comes under BS 7671. So you're still expected to produce certification for your wiring. If it's a brand new circuit, you would still be expected to notify it. And then building inspectors are also asking for certification under British Standard 5839 Part 6. So again, all I can do is say that there's a lot more paperwork to be done again. Big changes came in on the regulations. The standard was extended. It now includes common parts in sheltered housing. It's not just the flatlet itself. If you've got the staircase, the landings, they need to be included in it. You can use smoke detectors rather than heat detectors, and it's now recommended for installations in all habitable rooms. Depending on where you are in the country and depending on how the building inspectors decide to set their standards, they may not be happy now with just one smoke detector on the landing and one in the hall. They may actually ask you for more heat detectors in kitchens and smoke detectors in lounges, etc. Check if in doubt. Carbon monoxide detectors are now recognised as a suitable alternative. I can see it where carbon monoxide detectors will be, again, the norm as you're installing, as well as smoke detection. Sheltered housing and addressable systems are recommended for sheltered housing. As you will know, there are a lot of products out on the market. The good thing about the products is, I must admit, the instructions are fairly well documented, and these things, once you've opened them up and read the instructions, the installation practices aren't too difficult. Houses, dwellings, types of property that these things need to be installed in now: bungalows, multi-storey houses, individual flats, masonettes, mobile homes, sheltered houses, homes of multiple occupancy, NHS supported living, and permanently moored boats. These have all been added to the regulations, and if you're working on these, then I'm afraid you will find, if building and control are involved, they will be insisting some smoke detection, heat detection, fire alarm system is installed. Questions we always get asked on the technical helpline: which system? The certification always asks for grades and categories of system. The category of system and the grade of system are all documented in the standards, but it's all done on a risk assessment. People ring up and ask, what type of system do I need in this house? I'm afraid it's not a simple, easy answer that it's got to be this. A Part B will always ask for an LD3 system, but insurances may ask for more. Building inspectors may ask for more. So don't just go sticking a standard smoke detector on the landing, smoke detector in the hall, and think you're going to get away with it in all cases. It may well be enough, but always check, because the insurance companies may put a proviso on it, and the local authorities might put a proviso on it. While we're on that subject, just a point, again, we get a lot of questions on the helpline about do we need to put smoke detectors in a house when we're doing a rewire? The usual answer is no. Because building regulations, you've got to work to one small rule with the building regulations usually, and that is it cannot be in no worse state when you leave it than when you got there. So if there wasn't a fire alarm at the beginning, you don't necessarily need a fire alarm afterwards. The problem being, if building control get involved, they may insist on it. So again, if you know building control are going to be involved in a rewire because there's an extension going on or something else, please check, because it's often a problem that you've got it all fixed, all plastered, all done, and then building control come round and say they're not going to sign it off until you put a smoke system in. With risk assessment, if you're installing it, you're going to be doing the risk assessment. Simple as that. If you're designing it, you're going to design it. It's your risk assessment. And therefore you need to be able to take words from the documents and check that you are doing it properly, because it will unfortunately come back on you if it's not right. When you're designing it, you need the probability of fire occurring, what type of injury or death can occur, all probabilities, and it really is probabilities. It's not a question of it's this, it's this, it's this. Every single individual household is different, and therefore the design is different. The assessment of risk, fire risk, you need to actually consider each room separately. Some rooms, kitchens, more susceptible. If you've got a lounge with an open fire, that's more susceptible. Elderly people, things like that. You've got to put it all together in your head and come together with a good design of what you think you need. Statistical data is in the regs, so you can look at that, but you've got to base your prognosis, I suppose, on recognised fire statistics, the likelihood and the occupants. We, being in the house, are the user of the installation, and if we're a little bit infirm, old, we smoke, then we're adding to those risks. There's your risk factors. Houses where you've got smokers, they are more at risk. I'm not picking on ladies, but my wife loves to sit in the bath with candles. It is a bigger risk. Open fires are obviously a bigger risk. Some people still do the old chips in the old deep fat fry, and probably they're still the best way of doing them, but at the end of the day, it is a fire risk. Elderly people, fire risk. Infirm people, fire risk. Every house will have different people in it, and therefore the fire risks and the assessment is totally different. The book shows you a balancing act. Simple balancing act that you've got to try and get it right in the middle. My judge is that if you put a fire alarm system in, and as long as it works, then you've done your job. System types. We'll go through categories and types. Unlike Part 1 of the code, you only have systems in Part 1. Part 6, we have grades and categories. These are all asked for on the certification. System grade is related to the site conditions that you're in, type of equipment and materials you use, and they are recognised by a letter. There's 8B, C, D, E and F. We mainly install Ds. If you look at Part B of the building regulations, Part B of the building regulations asked for a minimum D. and interlinked smoke, heat with an integral standby supply. The worst case scenario, of course, besides none at all, is F, where you've got standalone units. Problem is with standalone units, if the battery goes beep, to shut it up, people take the battery out and you haven't got a fire alarm system at all. So the minimum that building regs expect, Part B of the building regulations, is a D. You may find that local authorities, depending on where you are, what type of building it is, what type of risk assessment is done on it, and insurance companies may ask for other equipment. A is very similar to fire alarm panels. B is detectors other than smoke and heat, so that is just a manual system, break glasses. C is an interlinked smoke, but instead of having a fire alarm panel, you usually got it interlinked on an intruder alarm, things like that. D is the one we know, a normal 230 volt power supply, and the smoke and heat detectors are interlinked. E is an interlinked one, exactly the same, but this one hasn't got a battery backup, and everybody's aware of the standalone units. Those are the system grades. As it says there, and I've already discussed, check, because there may be an enforcing authority that says what grade, insurers, and when you're designing it, inquire. Now, when you inquire, the person you inquire to, of course, will be the customer. And all you'll get with the customer is, huh? So, unfortunately, you've got to ask them to do a bit of legwork for you. Make sure that they've got in touch with their insurance company. Let them do it. Make them ask the local authority what you're expecting if I put a fire alarm system in. And then they can come back with the grade and hopefully type of system that you're going to put in. The certificate at the end will have to state on it what grade of system you've put in. As for categories, just to make it more complicated, they again are letters and numbers, and as I said, the common one is LD3. I've put that one at the bottom there. L means it detects and helps and prevents life being destroyed, if you like. L is protection for life. D means that it is in a domestic dwelling, which means it usually is Part 6 of the regs. And P means it is just for property protection. Property protection would be smokes and heats in a building like a warehouse, something like that, that people don't often go out into. And the number states the level of protection. The higher the number, the higher the protection. It only goes up to 3. That is the lowest form of protection we've got. And LD3 means it protects life. D means it's in a domestic dwelling and compliant with Part 6. And the 3 means that it's just the basic upstairs, downstairs, smoke detector interlinked. Typical diagram I've put up there. It's a flat. The levels of category there, that would be an LD1. An LD1 is covering life, it's in the dwelling, and it has got the highest category of detection in it. Every habitable room has got some type of detection in it, and the escape route has got your smoke detector in as well. Obviously more cost involved. That's why you need to ask. And there's obviously a problem, because if a council turns around once you've just stuck the lowest form in and you've stuck one smoke detector in the hallway, and then they say, no, that's not good enough, that means a lot of ripping out and sticking more cables in. LD2 covers the escape route, so it's in the hallway, and it covers the main rooms where a fire could cause a risk. And of course that would be the kitchen and the main habitable lounge. And then you come to the box standard LD3, and in a flat that would be it. In a flat, one smoke detector in the hallway is usually the norm. 2-story, then you start to put one upstairs, one downstairs. If you go 3 stories, you are then into Part B of the building regulations and you're on a fire alarm panel when you go above 2 stories. Just a few installation practices to go through. Smoke detectors have a radius of about 7.5 meters. So really, you should not be installing one if you've got a very, very long corridor. You'll need 2 so that they'll overlap. Again, a lot of people just take it that as long as you've got one downstairs and one upstairs, everything's fine. But if you've got a large house and it has got a long corridor, you may need 2 smoke detectors down the corridor. So there shouldn't be any more than 7.5 meters between. The Part B of building regulations mentions that there should be a smoke detector, heat detector, within 3 meters of every door. So again, one upstairs, one downstairs, we know is the norm, but if you've got a larger property and you've got a long corridor leading down to a bedroom, you may have to put in more than one heat detector on the first floor. And please be careful when you site them. All of this is in 5839 Part 6. You can't just put them anywhere. These things do detect heat, they do detect smoke. Dust, a lot of it also affects them. So siting is very important. Make sure that they're not placed near any light fittings. Obviously smokes and heats don't want to be, smokes don't want to be above a cooker anyway, but heats don't want to be directly above cookers. And you've got to make sure that they're not tight up against the wall, because the smoke has a tendency to billow here and bypass. And therefore the smoke detector eventually will pick it up, but it's late doing it. So make sure that you site them properly. As I said at the beginning, it's not only BS 7671 where we've got interlinks and wiring that we need to certificate. We do have to certificate under BS 5839 Part 6. Anybody had building controls asking for these? Yeah? Certification? They are waking up to it, most definitely. So, Trevor, can I ask the question? Yeah. Cert fill, has this got it on? It's got it on it. That's fair enough. Yeah, our new certification system, cert fill, has got the fire alarm detection systems on it. So the certificate's there for you to use. If you visit the training stand, there's a memory stick that you can take away the certificates with.
Is this a new step? They used to have just a general fire alarm system.
Yes, we have updated them, yeah. Yeah, they have been updated, yeah, most definitely. When you finish the system, please don't just turn around and say, that's it, it's installed, it must work. There is a person that's going to be using that building and he's going to be in it while you're not. So they need to know how it works, how it operates and how to maintain it. All systems have to be maintained. That's the Electricity at Work Regulations of 1989. The customer is responsible for maintaining it. They need to understand its operation. Obviously, they need to work out amongst themselves how to get out of the building and produce their own fire escape plan. How they can avoid false alarms, stoking fires and having roaring barbecues and chip pan fires. The procedures for testing it and the need for the routine maintenance. Routine maintenance is good even if it's just dusting it and giving it the old suck with a vacuum cleaner, because it really does need maintaining. Any system does.